Hello. I'm just going to cover some jazz education tropes today that I come across. Some of them I haven't really come across because I think I had a less formal route into jazz than a lot of other people. Um, but there's a lot of sort of sayings and one sentence bits of advice that people give. And to investigate the truth behind them, their usefulness and my thoughts, basically. I try not to spend too much time in any single one because it can get a bit long-winded. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is don't mix up extensions. Now, this is like a big thing with me. I'm sure you've noticed in videos that I'm a sort of advocate of having a bit more harmonic freedom. I basically think anything goes as long as you resolve it. And the mixing up extensions thing is, for me, most problematic when you have a melody that clashes. Okay, so for instance, if you're playing an accompaniment to The Days of Wine and Roses, you do not want to play a 4 minor 7 chord. You do not want to play B flat minor 7 there because the melody note is on A. Okay, I'll just play it. Try and sing it and play it through. The days of wine and roses, they laugh and run away. Terrible lyrics. Like a child at play. Okay, so if you play a flat on top of your chord there, I mean the most sort of standard kind of voicing that we have for a B flat minor 7 isn't too offensive because at least the A flat's in a different register, but that's not a nice sound. So it's things like that. Be aware of the melody, okay? And often if you look at a chart, it will have little extensions there to help you not muck it up. But when it comes to improvisation, you can do whatever you like. And the thing is that very often people kind of get a little bit set in their ways about the extensions, whereas in fact actually an accompanist should really be listening to the soloist and supporting what they do rather than imposing their idea of the harmony, which is why it's better always to learn the tune and to check out a few different versions of it before you play it. I real B is not a substitute for repertoire knowledge. Practice with a metronome, particularly like practice with a metronome on 2 and 4. So most of us know the sort of thing, right? I'm sure where we have. I'm just going to get a metronome up on the internet. You have a metronome click, say. So let's do it at like a nice swing tempo, like 160 or something, nice and easy. So that'll half it, 80, and then we have it on the 2 and 4, yeah? It's like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, there's nothing specifically wrong with that. It's just, I find if I practice too much with the 2 and 4, what happens is a certain kind of edginess starts coming into my playing. I feel like I've got to synchronize all the time with that beat. And it's like, I think it's a bit of a crutch. Like, it feels good to play with the 2 and 4. But actually, you can't forget about the 1 and 3. So the function of your playing is to, you might not be able to hear my foot tapping. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I'm grounded, stepping maybe from foot to foot. 1, 2, 4. You can often see me rocking like this when I play. 1. To me, the idea of your playing is that it should dance over the top of that basic, very human, one foot in front of the other, ground pulse. So, as long as you're doing that, you can put your I think that was a bit more relaxed because I was just feeling it more in 2. 1, 2. So if you start to go do ding ja with your foot, if you start tapping on 2 and 4, it can make you press ahead too much and perhaps create tension. Where actually you should be, and maybe overemphasize the 2 and 4, where you should be feeling the 1 and 3 in your body. Barry Harris says that the tapping, 1 and 3 should be about the lower body, and the 2 and 4 should be about the upper body, which comes from dance, really. So that's a big thing. He's not the only guy to say that, and there's a few people. So that's a big thing. Now, metronome practice at all is kind of, I suppose, a bit controversial, actually, in some areas. Sometimes some people feel that it kind of makes time robotic. I, for one, think that enough of my favourite players have practiced with a metronome to make it worthwhile, and the players who I think are great, who haven't practiced much with a metronome, have played with amazing rhythm sections from very, very early on. So I think practicing with a metronome is perhaps necessary for most people, but it's also important not to use it in the wrong way, I think, and to think of creative and interesting ways to use it. And another thing that doesn't really get talked about, which is really important, is actually playing along with records. Because at least then you're playing along with human time instead of just robot metronome time. And that can develop a deeper sense of the ebb and flow of actual human beings when they play jazz. Swing is not metronomic music. It has a quite surprising amount of ebb and flow in terms of tempo. And people sit in different parts of the beat. In fact, actually practicing so that you synchronize with a 2 and 4 click, if you do that, then it's not actually possible to swing. The basic element of jazz rhythm is the 8th note. Okay, this is a trope that I don't like very much. So, for me, the 8th note's a filler, right? If you see jazz written down like Charlie Parker or Charlie Christian solos, you'll see lots of 8th notes, right? You won't see that with Louis Armstrong. Simpler player, yeah? You won't see that with, if you would transcribe a Frank Sinatra version of a tune, you wouldn't see 8th notes. You would see syncopations, okay? So the first thing is like jazz isn't 8th notes anyway. It's not da 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 da. It's do da 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 da. The upbeat is da 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 on the 3rd triplet, and sometimes ba boom don't go go da da da. Sometimes it's on the 2nd triplet, right? So that idea that you have 8th notes is fundamentally a simplification. In fact, what you have is you have the 6/4, which goes like this. You can hear a lot in sort of medium tempo phrasing, things like Wes Montgomery probably made the camera bounce up and down then. And you have the clave, but da but 2/3 clave in that case, and those do a lot more, I think, to shape the phrase. If I sing something like a really simple Parker melody, like yeah ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba da. Yeah, ba ba da ba ba da ba doo dee ba do ba dee. Yeah, I'm not going da 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 ba da ba da ba da 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 ba da. Even that I can't da 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 ba da ba da 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 da. I can't get it, so there's no phrasing in it. It's ba boo ba da ba ba doo doo ba ba do ba dee. There's a natural za boo da ba ba doo da boom ba do dee, which is why I shouldn't learn bebop lines from the Omnibook, because at least listen to it, at least, be able to sing it, even if you can't work out the notes. And the notes aren't that hard, you should be able to work them out. It's better to work them out, you'll have a deeper connection with the line. But, it's better to learn one line really well than to, just read through loads of them and have none of them stick. Unless you're specifically working on your reading, which is a good thing to do. But in terms of actually learning the language, listening is so important. And like you hear those nuances. I always hear almost like a Gene Krupa sort of drum beat underneath that, and that's all based at boom 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 boom. It's all based on that basic clave thing, So like to say jazz rhythm is 8th notes. Well, I mean, it might be true of like a lot of the jazz guitarists I hear, it's just like da ba 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 da, and you're like, okay, well, that's like somebody talking to me without any emphasis at all, like talking to me like this, I don't know what you're saying because it's so boring, who wants to listen to that? Piano and guitar shouldn't comp together. Now, this is an interesting one because it is problematic, right? Piano and guitar should comp together, but to do it well requires more listening and more improvisation than perhaps we are used to. I think we all have a kind of autopilot thing, where we just go like, oh yeah, okay, this is me doing my jazz thing, and I'm just going to comp like I would normally. And I think like pianists understandably get locked into that, because I mean, the idea of having to comp with a guitarist is probably not something they have to do very often. So, you know, the simplest solution is just the guitar to lay out. And like, there's a lot of pianists where you kind of have to do that. Not necessarily bad ones. They just have their idea of how they want to do things. And you're like, fine, okay, it's not worth getting into it. But there are also pianists who listen, you know. And I think like a lot of the problems with the piano and guitar clashing comes from modern comping styles, because essentially the guitar is now the crap piano, if you like. You know, it's like, hey, you know, I'm playing piano voicings, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's like, I mean, apart from the fact that it sounds kind of nice, you know, it's not really what the guitar is best at. You know, the guitar is kind of best at strumming. That sound you can't get out of the piano, right? You can't get that sound. So it's like, well, rather than being the crap piano, why not be, you know, a guitar? I don't know. Like it seems. This is something that I heard from Julian Large. He said, like, why is it all the guitarists want to be pianists? You know, when they comp, and sax players when they solo. What's wrong with being guitar? And he's done very well out of making the guitar sound like a guitar. You know, so that's an interesting one. So if you've got a piano on stage, obviously you're always going to be the crap piano. So don't try and be the crap piano when the piano is being the real piano, and you have to find a way to deal with that. Now, obviously, if the pianist is playing very extended, kind of rich Bill Evans style voicings, then you know you're gonna have to probably lay out, because unless you're playing like something where you can do the sort of swing thing and play that kind of stuff, right? Which is fine. Or you can play guide tones and just be in there, low in the mix as a kind of texture. That's fine too. But you can't really expect to sort of play, you know, your voicings that you've been working on, because, you know, you're trying to be a pianist on guitar. It's like you need to have the awareness for that. Now, a lot of pianists will actually lay out, and of course the example of this, which everybody always cites, is Jim Hall playing with Bill Evans on Undercurrents. You know, and Bill makes space for Jim, and Jim makes space for Bill. And a lot of what Jim is doing is actually fairly, I mean, what we think of as swing accompaniment, but in a straightforward thing, you know, like let's see, so this kind of thing. That kind of thing. It's like, it's a more bebop-y version of what Freddie Green was doing. If I have it too loud, then it gets in the way, right? If I have it down here, or even softer, and you know, like kind of Peter Bernstein has taken that and broken up a bit more, obviously being a student of Jim Hall, but that kind of, you know, not getting in the way, this kind of more percussive sound, I think makes space for the piano. And of course, if you go back in time far enough, you go back to the early 1950s, 1940s, perhaps the most famous, one of the most famous jazz musicians in the world, Nat Cole, his trio was with Oscar Moore on guitar instead of drums. Like, actually, that was the common template. You know, you think of like Art Tate and Tiny Grimes and Slam Stewart, and back in the 40s, and you've got even the early music of Ahmad Jamal, and you've got you know, the Oscar Peterson trio with Herb Ellis on guitar before Ed Thigpen took over. You know, all these things. It's like very. It was kind of de rigueur, you know, to have the guitarist in there instead of the drums, because the guitarist could do two things. It could first of all play like the drums, you know, and people like Tal Farlow got amazingly good at making the guitar sound like a trap set. Listen to him play with Eddie Costa, for instance. But then it could also be another soloing voice that would take a bit of pressure off the piano and give the audience a bit of a respite from just hearing piano all the time. Okay, don't play the sixth on the 2 minor 7th. It gives away the 5/7 chord. This is a great one. This to me is just completely stupid framing. It's like do's and don'ts. Okay, so here's the thing. Like, it's right in the sense that if I play, you know, if I'm on a D minor, and I play the D minor 6th arpeggio, it sounds like a G9 chord. Sorry. It has that activity going on because it's got the tritone that wants to resolve. Okay, so that is completely true. But why are you saying don't play it? It's like, well, do play it if you want to, you know, if you want to sort of resolve. Okay, so be aware of that sound. It's like if I play a minor 7 chord, do do that kind of thing. So I'll play a D minor 7 going into I mean, in this case, you can probably think of it as a, was it a B minor 7 flat 5, but you know, it's also a D minor 6. Same thing, right? And then doing a bit of alteration there, or chromatics, or whatever you want to call it, going into the C major chord. Okay, so that is, you know, that is a classic example of a 2-5-1 lick, of course. But I'm not thinking of it that way. I'm just thinking like in G7, I've got all these options, you know, and I know that that one is gonna. But now I just played the whole thing with the minor 6 sound. It just sounds a bit more active. Sounds a bit more, you know. It's like, I think that's not a thing to worry about. I think it's a thing to acknowledge as being useful in you know, in line creation. You can just play the whole thing on G7. I play G7 scale. No, I mean, it's a bit boring, so I want to incorporate some changes. And then I play the. I didn't even play the B in that bit. I'm just playing like essentially arpeggio of F major 7th. So I Parker lick again, going to the 9th of C. So it's like, you know, I don't even have to put the 6th in if I don't want to. You know, yeah, like a until I hit the last chord, right? So that's complete nonsense to me. It's just like, it's true. The 6th does give you that dominant sound, but it's like you don't have to use it, or you can use it wherever you want. You don't have to feel like, oh, it's a 2 minor 7 chord, so I've got to play 2 minor 7. It's like, that's dumb. Sorry, but it is. It's like the Barry Harris approach, which obviously you know I like, is just to play on the 5-7 chord. But these options, such as 2 minor 7 and 4 major 7th and all these other things, they're all encoded into that one scale. And then you can try to substitute and everything else. You've got a lot of freedom. It's not like you're locked into playing 2 to 5 to 1. I mean, Charlie Barker didn't do that. Why should you? Another one, don't double the root note in a chord. Yes, it's an interesting one. Again, it has to do with, like, I think on the electric guitar, the big problem is that the bass is very dominant. And if you look at my setup here, I've actually got it so that the pole pieces, this is the Herb Ellis setup on a 175, you roll the pole pieces on the bass right back as far as they'll go almost, and then you boost the G string as far as it will go, and then you have, you know, yeah, there's other things. But the point is that it rolls off the bass. So it's not so bad. And, you know, it gives it a bit more mid-range push. And the reason why Herb Ellis, I think, did that is because, of course, he had to play rhythm guitar. So it works well for that. But I still find myself, if you looked at the controls on my AER, you'd see my bass is rolled right back. And the reason for that is generally to avoid clashing too much with the bass. Because if I'm playing these sorts of, you know, and I do this a lot professionally, if I'm playing these sorts of, they're often called Freddie Green voicings, but they're actually from George Van Epp. So I'm doing this kind of stuff. I'm always on the E string, right? So if I have too much E string, then the bass player is going to get annoyed, and rightly so. So I think that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. On piano, it's kind of the same, but like if you listen to a lot of the great pianists, then they do absolutely double the root note. I mean, that's what stride piano was, for instance, and then stride piano evolved into, you know, shell voicings. The Bud Powell. Bud Powell's still playing the root in the chords, you know. The rootless voicings thing is much later, you know. I'm playing these fragmentary chords, you know, if I'm playing like a blues and I go... I'm doing that, and that's a different texture, right? But I could maybe do that with tenor sax and it would sound great, but maybe with alto it wouldn't sound so good, you know. It's like... the other thing is, like, you know, if you double a root note when you're playing like a line, it has a certain emphaticness. So if I play like a... that almost sounds comically final. Whereas if I just go... just leave it on the third, it obviously sounds a little bit more, you know, less kind of final. And if I play... playing the second, the 9th, on top of that E flat major chord, it sounds more floating again. So that is, it's just an effect. Like if I go, da, 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 if I do that, then you know it's kind of like, this is the end of the section, ba-doo-da. So I've got 5, I've got the leading tone, I've got 1. It's the most brutal way possible of saying, I'm an E flat major, or E flat minor. It doesn't really matter, but it's saying E flat, right? Okay, so it's like, again, it's like in classical music, you have certain cadences. You're not going to hear Mozart end a piece of music on a C major chord with an E in the treble. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be C. But we see that in standard melodies. Like standard melodies generally finish on 1. Stella by Starlight is an exception, but most of them finish on the 1. I feel like this kind of stuff was never taught to me. You know, it's like the root note has a very powerful function in melodies. The last one, which is my favourite, is leave space. Leaving space is actually really bloody hard to do, okay? So I'm going to play a blues for you, and I'm going to try and not drop a beat. Yeah, try getting a beginning jazz guitarist to do that, even as badly as I did it. Okay, it's not going to happen. You know, so leaving space, I think, is a very advanced thing. In fact, Hal Galper talks about the fact that most players have to go through a period of being very notey before they can start to leave things out, before they can start to edit. And I certainly found that's the case for me. I feel like I'm getting into the editing stage now a bit more. Okay, so you know, one other thing is, like, if you listen to players like Pat Martino, for instance, who play lots and lots of notes, it's like, well, I mean, Pat Martino is one of the best jazz guitarists in the world. He doesn't leave much space. Let's say you listen to, like, you know, Salt Peanuts on 78, yeah? I mean, like, there's 3 minutes, they cram in all the music they possibly can. There's no space at all. What there is, however, in both Pat Martino and Salt Peanuts is variety. Now, in Pat Martino, it's quite subtle, but he accents notes and he plays in different registers. He doesn't just always play in the same register, okay? He has a very sophisticated rhythmic sense that goes within, like, that kind of eighth note thing. So although he's playing the eighth note grid that I complained about earlier, there's, you know, the shape of the line itself creates accentuation that's interesting to hear. And when you get into that, and Pat Martino's, certainly recently, is probably his work since his aneurysm in the 70s, he changed style, is probably harder to get into than somebody like Jim Hall or Wes Montgomery. But it has that in it. It has variety, and it has rhythmic ebb and flow in it, okay? So it does have that, even though it might not appear at first listen. Okay, now what the Salt Peanuts has is it has variety. So you have, you know, ensemble breaks, probably met that up timing wise. Drums stop and they start, and you get the you know, Charlie Parker sax break, and you get like Dizzy playing, and you know, drum breaks and all the rest of it, and it keeps your ear going oh. And this is no different from, you know, any pop producer. Like, listen to a Bruno Mars record, you'll hear something happening over there, something happening over there. So leaving space as an ensemble, okay, yeah, sure. You might want to leave space for the other musicians. That might be baked into an arrangement, or you might use your ears, which is much harder. But you know, when you solo, what you might consider doing, especially if you're playing in a trio or a quartet with no piano or something, you know, is to actually just play chords, because if you just drop out, can work, can sound something spacious and spare, but if you maybe, you know, just trading with yourself, so you play a line, that's hard to do though. You have to practice that, right? And I'm not sure if I did it perfectly there. I'd have to listen back. Maybe I dropped a beat somewhere. You know, it's like it's tough. Leaving space is really hard. Telling a beginner to leave space invites them leaving a sense of the form or just playing disconnected phrases. It can be very difficult. Like people like Miles Davis came from a background of just playing all of the notes. If you listen to his playing with Charlie Parker, it's not that he's not playing enough notes. He's playing too many of them, and they're all eighth notes. So he went through that phase as well. He did it on record. You can hear it. You know, it's fascinating. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you find it useful, and post any comments below. I'm sure you can think of some more tropes, and I'm sure you can think of some things that you feel I've got wrong and maybe want to discuss with me. Anyway, thanks for watching.